What do you think are the differences between the big top publishing houses and the smaller independent presses and the mid-range presses?
A lot of people who are writers, especially those who go to MFA mills, will try to argue that the people who are starting their own independent presses are fighting against the big corporations, but they put out just as much shit. Random House, Simon and Schuster, right around the time that MFA programs really rose in the 70s and became established, that they weren't going away. This is when the publishing houses decided, well, you know what? We're going to just go bottom line. And so a lot of the mid-listers, the mid-list sellers, were shunted aside, and a few of them latched onto the small presses. Um, and less poetry was being published by the big houses, and they were just bottom dollar. But what happened was a lot of these presses that rose up to sort of fill in the gaps. When I lived in Minnesota in the 1990s, there were like four terrible presses: Gray Wolf and New Rivers, and I forget the other two shit presses. But they just published their own friends. What happened is these MFA hacks started their own little presses, and I'll publish you, you publish me, I'll suck your cock, you'll lick my twat. That's how they promulgated writing. And so what happened is, and this is before the internet, is they would just do this sort of literary hand jobbing. Along comes the internet in the late 90s, or the mid 90s to late 90s, and poetry websites started going up. Poetry basically, for better or worse, really isn't published unless you're a shithead like Billy Collins. But what happened is, then you got all of these e-zines, these e-magazines. Cosmoetica is, when I post a poem online, or rarely, a piece of fiction, it's because it's of quality. But a lot of these presses, even though they were online and didn't have to put something out every month or every quarter, they would just say, send the stuff in, and people would flood it with all the crap. So the internet has basically taken up the slack of what had been mid-list and small presses. There are still some small presses. I've known a few people who started them, and most of them are, again, just doing the hand job thing.